Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Flip Genius podcast. I'm excited today to talk to my friend Chris Logan. Chris, welcome to the show.
Brandon, thanks for having me, brother. I'm really excited to be here and just kind of share anything with your audience that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris and I know each other through a mastermind. We're in a Coaching Inc. mastermind. Shout out to Tom Kroll and his team. Awesome group of people from all over the country who are doing all things in real estate and other industries as well, but kind of like an executive coaching type mastermind. So got to know Chris through that, and I'm really excited to have him share kind of his background and what he's doing these days, because I know it'll add a lot of value to our listeners. So Chris, why don't we start off with what you were doing before you got into real estate, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So before I got into real estate, there was two positions that I mainly did. The first one was I did cell phone sales working for Verizon. And I was one of those people in the middle of the booth in the mall back in the day, way back in the day, calling people over, getting them to switch cell phone service providers. And so that's something that really later on, I would realize that getting rejected every single day like that was going to be a powerful catalyst for helping me to have more success in real estate. So we can come back to that here in a minute. But the job immediately I was doing before this, I was working for a marketing agency, and I would do a lot of cold calling to get leads, small to medium sized businesses. I would do door knocking, and that really went on to help my real estate journey as well.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great background, and we will talk a little bit more about that, especially the cell phone in the mall. I think that's I can remember so many times. In fact, the last time this happened just a few months ago, I went into the mall to buy my wife something for Christmas, and these two girls were working at like a makeup booth in the middle of the mall, and they're like, "Hey, come here, come here, come here, come here." And I'm really pretty good at just saying no and walking by, which I did the first time. Second time I came back by the time I was done with them, 15 minutes later, they had given me a facial and put all this cream all over my face. And I came home, my wife's like, "What in the world is on your face?" I'm like, "Oh, you'll never believe what happened." So it works. What you guys,
totally.
what you did.
Yeah,
So
everybody gets trapped there, man. I've walked away with one hand smooth, the other one not.
yeah, yeah, that's funny. So I know already how that helped you in real estate, but we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So had those two jobs, marketing agency, which was a lot of cold calling, which is great, and then obviously the cell phone sales, both good backgrounds for getting into real estate. So what made you go, you know what, I'm gonna be done with this job. I'm gonna focus all my time on real estate. What was that kind of aha or pivot moment?
Yeah, so I started looking at when I was working for the marketing job, it was a great company and I loved working for them, but there was a lot of instability with the company at that time, where basically that company was facing bankruptcy, and my wife's company that she was working for, her W-2 job, that company was facing bankruptcy as well. And so we both were making great money, but at the same time, we had a big concern about our future, and we knew that there was a future together. And so we're like, we need to make some moves so this can happen, just in case, we wake up tomorrow and they say, don't come back to the office. When I grew up, my dad had worked a lot of different types of jobs, and there was a lot of seasons of unemployment. And it kind of made me realize that having a job is the riskiest thing that you can do, right? If you're a good steward of your income while you're at your job, it can provide a great platform to springboard into your own business, right? But outside of that, your company could wake up tomorrow and just say, "Hey, we don't need you anymore," and then you're done. You're kind of like out in the cold. So that was really my motivator to get into real estate. And I always heard that wealth was created through real estate, right? All wealthy people own real estate or have been in real estate. So what I did is I was at church one day, and at the end of service, I went up to a friend of mine who I knew was really successful, didn't know he was in real estate at all. So I went up to him and asked him about getting involved in real estate. And he's like, "Have you ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad yet?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, you got to read it." So I read that book, and I bought it that afternoon. And then I stayed up till like 3 a.m. to finish it. And it totally changed my perspective on things. I was like, oh my gosh, like the whole, American dream where you go to work for a company till you're 65 and you retire, and hoped you have enough to live on in your 401k. Like I realized that was kind of like the biggest scam of all, right? And
Yeah.
so I thought to myself, that's just not the life that I want. I don't want instability. Like I want to create my future, you know?
Hmm.
So what I did is I signed up for a 3-day workshop with
Okay.
Robert Kiyosaki's team
Yeah.
and went to a 3-day event. They put up all these different types of real estate strategies on the board on the third day, and they walked through everything. They walked through creative finance, rentals, flips, development, and then they landed on one that I was like, this makes sense, and that was wholesaling. So when they said you
Okay.
could take a piece of paper and you could flip it for tens of thousands of dollars, you didn't need you didn't need great credit, you didn't need a ton of money, and that was a perfect fit for me at the time because I was actually bouncing back from my own setback. I was all in. And so that's when we started. We signed up for a wholesaling class in Miami. And from there, I'd love to tell you that our first deal came pretty quickly and everything was sunshine and rainbows and we retired, but that's not the case. It actually took me 6 months to land my first deal. And then from
Wow.
there, once we had that, that was the proof we needed that this works. And if we can do one deal, we can do 100.
Yeah. So what'd you do for those 6 months for income while you were, I'm assuming you were learning wholesaling, you were starting to talk to people, try to find properties.
Yep.
Was your wife still working at that time or you had saved up enough money to float you? What'd you do during that time?
Yeah, so we both were working at that time. So the first
Okay.
3 years of our wholesaling business, it was pedal to the metal. We were working high pressure jobs, 60 to 80 hour weeks. And then on top of that, we were building our wholesaling business at the time. And at the time, we were doing it locally.
Okay.
And it was a grind. Like it was just crazy. I was driving to my office that was probably an hour and a half from where I lived, and then staying in a hotel 4 days out of the week. I was a road warrior, you know, and then I would come
Mm.
home on a Thursday to put out bandit signs in our territory when it's
Yeah.
dark at night, like not as much traffic on the road, almost getting struck by lightning. And then I would get in my car and then drive back and then get to my territory the next morning and, you know, do it all over again.
Yeah.
So I did that and it was a big challenge, but we made it happen. And after 3 years, you know, we reached a point where our wholesaling business was very consistent. We were doing deals consistently every month and we had stacked up enough resources to be able to say, you know what, I feel comfortable leaving. Right.
Hmm.
And so that's when
Yeah.
we made the decision to go in full time.
That's great. I love it. So when you first started those first 3 years, were you doing any type of paid advertising or paid marketing to find properties, or were you doing like driving for dollars, door knocking, free stuff that didn't cost any money to bring to find the properties?
Yeah. So the very first deal that we did was through bandit signs. I had
Okay.
like a marketing budget roughly of like $300 to $500 a month when I first started. And
Yeah.
so we did a lot of bandit signs. I did everything you could possibly think of, man. I was driving for dollars, doing bandit signs. I was doing flyers, door hangers, drop card marketing at Walmart. Like I was doing, we were putting ads in the newspaper in the classified section, Craigslist, like everything you could possibly think of, like we were doing to maximize like how quickly we could get a deal, right? And it wasn't until we started doing direct mail that things got pretty consistent. And that's when we started really getting, you know, we were sending mail to people who are behind on their taxes from the courthouse. And that was pretty amazing. And then eventually direct mail just got, you know, the cost per lead was just too high that we switched over to cold calling. And that's when our business like really took off. So
Okay.
about 2 years before COVID, we made the decision to go virtual, right? So instead of meeting sellers in person, we were doing the entire business from home, like talking to sellers, putting deals under contract over the phone, and then getting them sold over the phone as well. And then that's when things really skyrocketed. And then our first month of hiring a team of cold callers, actually our third month of hiring a team of cold callers, we actually put 22 deals under contract, like all from cold calling. So that's when things really
Wow.
took a shift for us.
Yeah. 22 in a month.
Yeah.
And or it took 3 months, I guess, but you had 22 properties under contract in a month. All
Yep.
insane. That's a lot. That's high volume. I guess you had a team of people, or was it just you and your wife at that time?
Yeah. So at that time, it was my wife and I. She was going on or initially. She was the one going on all the appointments, and when we switched over to virtual, she was the one talking to all the sellers and putting deals under contract, and then I was the one selling them all. And we had two or three cold callers from overseas that were bringing us the leads. So I
Okay.
started out cold calling myself to land deals to get proof of concept for the first
Yeah.
couple of deals. We made some great money on those. And I was like, let's just pedal to the metal. And that's when we hired some cold callers, and they started bringing us leads, and we started to get really the hang of our systems, and things started really producing.
Yeah. That's great. Is your wife still involved in the business now? Is she still in the day to day?
Yeah. So our positions have changed. So we have a small team. So she no longer does acquisitions over the phone. She more so stays on top of our acquisition rep that we have. And he's the one right now that's making the calls, putting deals under contract, and then also getting them sold too. So there
Okay.
was a point where we grew our business to over 7 figures, and we had a pretty large team. But then we realized that it just wasn't the vision that we had for ourselves and what we wanted to do. So we slimmed the team back to keep it lean, to keep it small, keep it all. And things were much better at that point. And like I
Yeah.
said, now the guy we have putting deals under contract, he also gets them sold.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting when, and I had a similar story, of course, coming up through the real estate world, to where, scale was the big sexy word. Like everybody wants to scale, everybody wants to get bigger. And I think
Yeah.
you do a couple of deals and then you do some more, you start making really good money. The margins are really good, especially when you're wholesaling. And we did the same thing, 20 up until mid 2022. We were doing, 10, 11, 12 deals a month pretty
Yep.
consistently. And
Hmm.
one of the big benefits then for us as wholesalers was I think there were 11 hedge funds that we were selling to.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Those are
they
the
were
great times.
buying at almost retail prices. So it's like
Yeah.
anything we can get under contract, we can sell. It didn't matter the price. As long as it was a dollar below retail, they would buy it. And so our average price per deal on a wholesale deal went up to $42,000,
Amazing.
just for wholesaling. So we weren't
Hmm.
having to flip. We were still flipping a little bit, but anyway, so we scaled. I think we got up to 9 people total at that time.
Yeah.
Like you said, 7-figure business and making a lot of money. And it was very time consuming and a lot of stress and having to fire people and hire people and train people. And it's just not what we had envisioned it being. It wasn't what we had hoped for. Hedge funds kind of pulled out towards the end of 2022. Interest rates went up. Things started slowing down. We did the same thing. We scaled back down to just a few people, right size, people we can work with, enjoy spending time with, and still, make good money, impact other people's lives, help other people. Much more enjoyable, much less stress than when we were on the scale mindset.
Yeah. The one thing I'll tell you is that wholesaling is a cash cow business. So you can have a wildly profitable wholesaling business that gives you options to do other things. I know
Hmm.
people that have gotten into this and they say wholesaling is the only thing I want to do, and that's what they do, right? I know other people who've said, I want to make a lot of money in wholesaling, and then I want to use that as a foundation to start buying rentals, start doing some long-term stuff. And
Yeah.
there's no wrong way to do it. But hands down, by far, wholesaling is the best way for people to get started because it helps you understand like what a good deal looks like and what a bad deal looks like. So when the time does come for you to start buying things yourself, like you can make more confident buying decisions. Teaches you
Yeah.
how to negotiate, teaches you marketing. And
Hmm.
if you can do this virtually, you're not limited by your home territory. There's a lot of people that I talk to who are just in rough areas to start. Maybe the state they live in requires a real estate license. Maybe the state they're in is more of like a rural type territory where they can flip cows, but they can't flip houses, right? So there's a lot of sellers in those areas, but not as many buyers, which makes wholesaling hard. So when you're
Hmm.
doing this virtual, it just opens up a lot of options for you because what we found in our own business is that for us, the best deals were not in our backyard and we lived in a great territory, but our best territory was like 6.5 hours away, you know? And so had we not go virtual, like we could have just been stuck being small in our local area.
Hmm.
And then who knows like where things would have gone at that point. But, because we're virtual and we're able to go to different states, different territories, there are just some areas that are much easier to do deals in than others.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit, the virtual. We still do
Sure.
in-person appointments for the
Yeah.
most part, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before we get there, let's go
Mhm.
back and kind of share with our listeners what doing that cell phone sales in the mall and then the cold calling with a marketing company that you worked for. How did those help you, build you, teach you for what you eventually are doing in real estate?
Yeah, for sure. So something that that I share with a lot of new wholesalers who are just getting started, a lot of clients, is that rejection makes you rich, right? A lot of people take rejection personally. Okay. And so did I in the very beginning, especially being one of those tiny cell phone booths in the mall when you got everybody walking by you saying, no, 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 screw you. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so that really builds thick skin pretty quickly. Right. So
Hmm.
that's definitely something that helped because by the time I got into real estate, rejection for me was not like I had some concerns like about the process. Like, am I going to do this right? I don't going to mess it up. I don't want to leave someone in a worse situation than when they met me, right? But I really didn't have a fear of rejection because I've gone through it so much, right? And then onto the marketing company, I had done door knocking and people telling you no in person, being rude in person, and then on top of that, cold calling to generate leads. So it really, again, gave me very thick skin. So nothing that people say too much anymore
Hmm.
phases me at all, because
Yeah.
I've heard it worse and 10 times over. So,
Yeah.
so that's definitely something I would say those positions have as an advantage because
Hmm.
one of my original real estate mentors, he told me, he said, because at the time I was telling him I was thinking of getting a different job. And he said, the best job that you can have, if you're looking at real estate for your full time thing, right? The best job that you can have is either a job where you can learn real estate while you're at the job, or you can learn a skill that's going to help you on your real estate journey. And by
Hmm.
far, sales and marketing, those are two skills that really, really help you on your real estate journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, one of the things, there's a lot of cliches about it, but every no you get is one step closer to a yes.
Totally.
And so learning to accept no and say, that's fine, move on to the next one. I think some real estate, I understand the concept of it's a numbers game. And I
Hmm.
also understand it's a relationship game, which every business
Yeah.
is. But the reality is, and I tell a lot of people, that we help and teach and coach, um, national average, I believe, is still at 2% of people are motivated sellers. 2% of people who are interested in selling their property are motivated sellers. So what does that mean? That means if I get 100 calls or I make 100 calls to people who say, yes, I want to sell my house, only two out of those 100 are going to be what we call motivated sellers. So what does that mean? 98 people are going to say no to my offer,
Yep.
right? But I'm looking for the two that do. So from that standpoint, I understand it's a numbers game. And there's a lot of details, obviously, that you teach and I do as well, about how to talk to people, how to get the information, how to communicate properly. But at the end of the day, you have to be willing to knock on a bunch of doors, make a lot of phone calls, take a lot of no's, and not let it get you down
Yeah.
until you can get to that yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So no is a pathway. And like you said, the more no's that you get out of the way, get you closer to a yes. So when you're first getting started, like the most important thing to do is to track your activity. Like focus on the process, but being detached from the outcome. Okay. So
Hmm.
like if you're making calls in the beginning, track how many no's it takes you to get to a yes, right? And then if you can track how many no's, each time that you make calls, each day that you make calls, you're going to get better and better. And slowly you're going to start seeing it's less and less and less no's to get that yes. But when you finally get that yes, it's super sweet. So this way
Yeah.
it transforms your view of no, because instead of viewing no as like, oh, like they're rejecting me or like turning me down or I lost money because I couldn't do that deal, it becomes closer to, you know what? I got it. Like I'm only 10 no's away from getting that yes. So let's power through these, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like you're getting the people that are not a fit out of the way as quickly as possible so you can get to the ones that are.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think probably encouraging people who have never had a sales job or a job where you get rejected a lot is a great way to start in this business because
Yeah.
I had a student years ago, probably it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. But that when the calls would come in, she would answer the phone. And when they rejected her, said, don't ever call me again, or I'm never selling, or screw you, whatever they told her, she said after two or three of those negative calls, it would just ruin her whole day. And she would just have to
Yeah.
like go back to bed and it would be frustrating. And I was like, well, you need to do something to get over that because this business is all about hearing no and it not letting it bother you. And you gotta, I think like you said, you've got to get used to having those conversations. And the only way to get good at it is to do it. And so, we say take imperfect action, progress, not perfection, some of the things that we talk about. And I had a call yesterday with one of our clients, one of our coaching students, and I said, I want you to spend your time calling other wholesalers and talking to them and building a relationship with them. And I want you to spend your time calling real estate agents and talking to them. And they're not doing any paid advertising or paid marketing right now. They're just doing all free stuff. I'm like, I want you to get comfortable talking to people again and again and again and again. So just spend the next 2 weeks, call 3 real estate agents a day, call 3 wholesalers a day, and just have conversations. And then we'll move into, once we get some leads that start coming in, start talking to sellers again and again and again and again. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. First time you do it, you're not going to be very good. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And that's how you learn to get better, like you just explained.
Yeah, like when you were a little baby, like, and you're trying to walk, you'd fall on your face like a ton of times, but no one ever thought as a little baby, well, maybe just walking isn't for me, right? But It's so funny, how often do people do that when they're looking to start a business in real estate? They get all jazzed up in the very beginning and they're super excited about it. But when the rubber meets the road and they got to make the calls, they're like, oh, this person told me no, or, oh, this, they were rude to me. It's like, do you want to do this or not? Right. And so what I find really helps in those moments when you're having those hard days is to tie the reason you do what you do. A lot of people are like, oh, I got to get motivated, right? I need motivation. No, you don't need motivation. The meaning of motivation is purpose or a reason. Right. So if you're making calls and you're just getting started and you feel like you need to be motivated to make calls, you don't need to go watch a motivational video on YouTube. What you want to do is you want to attach a burning why to making those calls. Like, why are you doing this? Why did you get into real estate in the first place? And then go 7 levels deep there. I want to get into real estate to provide, the future I want for me and my family. Okay, cool. What would that allow you to do? But why do you want to do that? Right. And then you do that, you get down 7 levels deep, and that's really going to give you your real, authentic, burning why. So once you discover that, you don't need to ever be motivated ever again. And you're going to view every no as a pathway to a yes. So it's not something that comes overnight, but it's something that can really help. So having a sales background, like, you don't need to be a sales expert to have success in real estate. But what sales teaches you is 2 things. Sales teaches you how to communicate with people. And then sales also teaches you how to manage a pipeline and follow up with leads, which are 2 things that a lot of people are missing when they first start. But I've had people, clients that I've worked with that have come in, had no sales experience whatsoever, which can be good at sometimes because they don't come across as salesy and they have good conversations. And they just kill it, So it really just comes down to attaching a burning why to what it is that you're doing. And then from there, just following the process, staying detached and focus on the activity in the beginning, because it's going to be a lot of activity to get to where you want to go to.
Yeah, that's great. I think 2 things that you said as we were talking through that with your background that I want to touch on again. One of them was your persistence. So when you first started, it took you 6 months to get your first deal, but you didn't give up after 1 month. And, I had a similar thing when we first started out 20 plus years ago. We were just buying onesie twosie houses to flip and weren't doing a lot of outbound marketing or anything like that. But when we first started outbound marketing, I spent $5,000 the first month, no deals. $5,000 the second month, no deals. $5,000 the third month, and I got a deal and I wholesaled it and made $35,000 on it. So then I was like, okay, that pays back the $15,000 that I spent and gives me extra money to start doing some more paid marketing and direct mail and stuff like that. So persistence and continuing to do it again and again and again, because there's a why behind it that drives you beyond, oh, well, this didn't work this month and I spent $5,000. I'm just going to quit and go back to my 9 to 5. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I think is huge is you educated yourself. So you read that book, which, by the way, Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably the number 1 book I hear from people who are in real estate that really gave them the vision. So if you haven't read it, make sure you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. My son is 15 and he's read it too, or reading through it. But you read that book, and then you went to a boot camp, a 3-day workshop. Same for us. We hired a coach who had more experience, had done what we wanted to do, was successful. And they could, when we started, I didn't know what a CRM was, right? I'm just writing
Right.
down notes on a notebook paper, like I need to call this person back tomorrow. When you're doing and you're growing your business and you need a CRM, a customer relationship management software that you can keep up with all the leads, they have built-in automation. So you're not going to start with that. But if you have someone who's been there and done it and knows what they're doing, and they can say, hey, you're going to need a CRM. Here's 5 that I would recommend that you can look at. Here's the number 1 I would suggest. Well, that just saved you a year's worth of trying to figure it out on your own because someone
Totally.
else was willing to point you in the right direction. So I think that's huge in learning and growing, is having someone else that you can bring in, a mentor, a partner, or a coach that can kind of point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I've never really understood people who want to learn this business on their own and who don't want to hire a coach. I've never really
Yeah.
understood that because for me, when I was getting started, I'd never invested in coaching or anything like that before. And honestly, I spent more money on coaching when I first got started in this than I did on any car that I ever previously owned.
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, and so for me, but my mentality was real estate's an asset. It's an investment. It's complex in the very beginning if you don't know what you're doing. And I don't want to make mistakes that could cost me 2, 3, 4, 5 times the overall investment that coaching could. So for me,
Right.
it made more sense and I was taught by my dad to learn from the mistakes of others. Don't go through the mistakes yourself. One of the most valuable lessons
Right.
he gave me. And that was my main driver. I didn't want to go through the mistakes. I didn't want to take 10 years to do my first deal. I
Right.
wanted to get there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And I think most of us that I know, most of my friends, most of my people that are in real estate who have been successful or been in it for years has the same mindset. The people that I talk to who are like totally against coaching. I saw somebody posted something the other day on Facebook about, oh, I would never pay somebody. I'll just go learn it myself. And I'm like, that's great. I'll see you in 7 years when you
Yeah.
figure out something that I can tell you in 15 minutes. But the people that I know that are successful, they don't have a problem. And we all, you, me, we all spend lots of money annually on masterminds and coaches
Yeah.
and trying to help us learn more and learn what we don't know. So I agree with you. I do want to go a little bit deeper on virtual wholesaling. And part of
Yeah.
this is
Let's
for
do
my
it.
own knowledge because we've always done in-person appointments and we've tried to do virtual and we didn't really, we dipped our toe into it. I didn't have somebody teaching me, coaching me on how to do that. So I was like, oh, I'll just try to figure it out. Didn't work. So I'd love to hear from a virtual standpoint, if you can kind of walk through the steps. And really, I focus a lot on finding off-market properties. That's kind of the niche that I focus in on within flipping and wholesaling. So I know all of the strategies, but I would love to know, like in a virtual business, you're obviously not sending direct mail to everybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you pick a market? How do you do your marketing? How do you set up your marketing so that you can find the properties off market when you're running a virtual business?
Yeah, great question. And this is probably one of the most popular questions that I get from people who are local looking to go virtual, or people who are just getting started in this thing and like, how in the world can I do this? So the very first step when it comes to virtual is identifying a good market for wholesaling. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of wholesalers make is picking the wrong territory. They pick an area that they have no chance in this lifetime of doing a deal anytime soon because it's either way hyper competitive, or B, it's the complete other opposite polar end of the spectrum where there's not any buyers there. It's just not a territory that's good for investing, right? So I have a very simple formula that I use to identify a great territory for wholesaling. Mind if I go ahead and dive into that?
That would be wonderful. Yes, please share.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So the first step to identifying a great territory for wholesaling is you want to take a look at the county that you're starting in first. I always recommend people to start in counties first, and you want to look at the median home prices for that county. Now, before I get to the median home price, how do you decide where to start, right? Because there's a lot of different places. So I find typically when people are getting started, people want to look at their own territory first because you can go virtual in your own territory. That's exactly what we did in the very beginning. The second thing you can do is you can look at a state or an area that you have family in or friends in, or maybe you've always wanted to own a house there, or maybe a place you've just enjoyed going on vacation, right? Chances are, if it's a place like that, it's probably good for investing. So that's kind of like your kicking off point to start, right?
Okay.
And so you want to pick a county in those areas. and you want to look up what the median home price is for that. Now, for people listening to this who don't know what the median home price is, the median home price is the middle home price. It's the most common type of house being bought and sold in a territory. And what you want is for the median home price to be less than the nationwide median home price across the country. The reason for that is that's going to be what's considered affordable housing, which is exactly what your buyers want, what their end buyers want, the homeowners that are going to be moving into this property. And if that's what your buyers want, then that's where you need to be, right? So the very first step is looking at the median home price there, okay? So the second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that that territory has older inventory. So you're not looking to go into an area that has properties that are all built in 2022, 2023, 24, 25, right? Like you want houses in that area to be at least 25 to 30 years old in the area that you're starting, where at least there's inventory like that, because that's the investment inventory. A lot of people try to target brand new houses because they just don't know what they're doing. I did it in the beginning. Pretty houses. But the problem is those sellers don't have enough equity in those properties to where they could sell and where you could walk away with a wholesale fee. So, and then the last thing that you want to look for is recent cash buyer activity there. So there has to be recent cash sales, and you could just go on Zillow. You can type sold properties in there in the area you're looking to start and see if there's a lot of red dots all over the place, right?
Okay.
So that's the first step of picking a territory. So when you pick that territory, you solely want to focus on one. A lot of people, when they go virtual, they think they have to go nationwide and focus on a bunch of different ones, and they spread themselves and their marketing too thin. You want to isolate one area, and that's the first step.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, I've never had that explanation given to me before. I've always thought if you're going virtual, that means you're buying leads from all over the country. And how in the world do you know what a value is in Utah versus New York versus Florida? And how do you handle those conversations? So yeah, that's very helpful. And I've even thought about it when I was looking at doing virtual before, because I'm in Atlanta, and which is a super competitive market. It's like Phoenix is a super competitive market. There's a company here in town that works with other wholesalers, and they have a list of wholesalers that they work with, that they JV with, and their list is over 1,000 people who wholesale in the Atlanta market. So there's a lot of us out there competing for properties. And so I looked at, I wonder where another territory where I could go where I wouldn't have 1,000 competitors that I was competing against. But we never did. We stayed local and, just worked through it. But how do you, once you identify that territory, like you just explained, then how do you buy the data? How do you get to what type of marketing do you do in order to get to the people to get leads that you can make offers on the property?
Yeah. So the next step that we want to do is we want to, so a lot of people will look for sellers next, right? There's actually one step right before that. So mind if I insert that right there?
Yes, please.
Cool. So a big mistake that a lot of wholesalers make is finding sellers first, right? Finding the deal first. They're told by a lot of gurus out there and people on YouTube that if you find a good deal, it'll sell itself. Don't worry about finding buyers. But that advice is total baloney, and it keeps people stuck and prevents them from doing deals. So and it kept me stuck for a long time. I remember putting deals under contract and thinking they were quote unquote deals. And I would send them out to my buyers list and nobody would want them. And then I'd be stressing out during my inspection period, hoping I could sell it. It was just, it was crazy. So it wasn't until I realized that the best way to do business, if making money relies on you having a buyer, find your buyer first. Grow your buyers list first, get about 25 buyers on your list, find out exactly what they want, and bring them what they want. And when you do that, wholesaling becomes so much easier. There's no more guessing. There's no more stressing. There's no more anxiety, wondering if you can sell the deal. You have a really good shot of selling the deal because you've grew your buyers list first. So good deals don't sell themselves because most new wholesalers, when they first get started, they have no idea what a good deal is. So how could it sell itself? So when they lay that foundation of having their buyers first, everything becomes much easier. Okay.
So you're building your buyers list, and I know there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yep.
that you teach, and then you're talking to the buyers to find out what their buy box is, or to find out what kind of properties they want, how much they want to spend, what kind of discount they want or profit margin they want built in. And then you're going to build your marketing based on what feedback you get from those buyers.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So a great place to find buyers that's free is Facebook groups. Facebook groups have three types of contacts in there. You have wholesalers, you have realtors, and you have cash buyers in there, right? So when you're growing your buyers list in the very beginning, a big mistake a lot of people make is viewing growing your buyers list as qualifying, right? You want to view growing a buyers list as lead generation in the beginning, right? So you don't want to do a whole 60-minute interview with a buyer qualifying them to put them on your list when you don't even have deals to sell them yet, right? Because that's going to work against you and keep your buyers list small. Ask me how I know. Kept mine small for a very long time. So it wasn't until I flipped the switch and started viewing growing my buyers list as lead generation that everything got so much easier, right? So rather than like interrogating these people, I went to asking them, finding out what type of buyer they are. Are they a cash buyer, wholesaler, realtor, right? Because all three can help you. The second thing that I would find out is where they're buying. And is there any zip codes that they avoid and why? That gives me a really good idea as far as what's going on in the area. So it gives me intel, right? And then the third thing I get from them is their best contact information, right? So that's it. The type of buyer, where they're buying, areas they want to avoid, and then what's the best contact information for them, like their email address if I called them on the phone, or their phone and email if I reached out to a DM. So once I have that, that's all I need. And I don't ask them any other questions about where they're buying, those recent projects they've done, bank statements, anything like that. I don't go anywhere near there until I have an opportunity to send them. They reach out and they're ready to make an offer.
Okay, great. So built your buyers list first, and then now we have a buyers list. How are we going to find the property? We decided we're going to operate in Jackson, Mississippi. I just picked that out of the air. Jackson, Mississippi. We got a buyers list. Now what?
Yeah. So our next step is we want to identify our motivated sellers, right? So we want to pull a list of motivated sellers, people who are likely to need to sell their property, right? So in this market that we're in right now, it's really critical that you target sellers who are actually motivated, right? You don't want to go broad right now, just targeting an absentee owner list, which is a list of landlords with equity, and that's it, right? Because that's not going to work in this market right now. You don't want to target just sellers who have been in their property for 10 years or 20 years and they have equity. Like, you don't want to do that. You're going to spend a lot of money and not get any deals. So in this market we're in right now, you want to target situations where people need to sell, not would be nice to sell, right? And so the situations we typically target in this market we're in right now is inherited houses, properties that have been damaged by fire, tired landlords who live in a different state, have a property in a state they're not in, and that property is vacant. We like to target, pre-foreclosures, people who are 2 years behind in their taxes or more. We like targeting vacant houses, but specifically landlords who have vacant houses. So there's a lot of different situations you can target, but what you really want to be thinking about is who needs to sell right now, not wants to sell. And absentee owners are a very good list to target in the current environment we're in right now.
Okay, that's great information. Yeah, I think those we call them niche lists, are what you want to focus on, and you can actually stack those on top of each other. It's called list stacking. And so one of the things that we like to do when we buy our data, there's a lot of data providers out there, but when we buy our data, one of the data providers that we work with actually scores ranks that data based on how many motivating factors they have. So like you mentioned, somebody that owns they live in California, they own a house in Jackson, Mississippi, and it's vacant, and they're behind on their taxes, and they have liens because they haven't cut their grass in 2 years. Now we're starting to get 3, 4, 5 motivating factors that are all stacking up. That's the person we want to target more so than somebody who lives in California and they own a house in Georgia. That doesn't necessarily, that's not really a motivating factor. Even if they've owned it for 30 years, they've got a lot of equity, high equity. That doesn't necessarily by itself mean that they're a motivated seller. So we try to find those that have 5, 6, 8, 10 different motivating factors all stacked on top of each other. That's the one you want to spend all your time marketing to.
Yeah, totally. And where we pull these lists for are in Deal Machine. And
Mm,
because Deal Machine, we found, gives us really accurate phone numbers, and you can actually target the likely owner of a property too. So you're not really reaching a lot of like renters and things like that. And so that
mhm.
just worked really well for us. They keep it simple. And then we get our leads coming in, right? Start making calls. So if, for us, it'd be our team is making calls, but for people who are
Mhm.
getting started, like they would just want to pick up the phone and start hammering the phones, calling these hyper motivated sellers.
So with Deal Machine, I've used Batch Leads, PropStream. I've used a bunch of different programs, but with
Yep.
Deal Machine, you can buy the data. And what all does Deal Machine do? Is it like an all-in-one? Kind of tell us what Deal Machine does.
Sure. So Deal Machine actually, so when you sign up for a membership with Deal Machine, you get lists of motivated sellers. They also provide lists of cash buyers as well, and you get phone numbers with these lists, so you can reach out to
Okay.
property owners immediately, and they're highly accurate. We've tried a lot of different types of services out there, and just for what you get when it comes to Deal Machine, it's a really great tool to start, especially for newbies who are just getting started because they keep it simple. Something else
Okay.
they incorporated is AI to be able to
Mhm.
analyze your lists, to be able to find the truly most motivated people in there, because they can have like an AI bot drive the list and pull out all the houses that have significant damage or exterior distress, which really makes it
Mhm.
even higher chance you're going to talk to the right people.
Okay. And then is there a dialer in Deal Machine, or do you still have to take that information and either send it to a direct mail printer or use a different dialer, or do they have anything built in the Deal Machine?
Yeah, so there's two ways you can go with dialing. You can use a single line dialer, which is included in Deal Machine membership, right? Or you can do, is my personal favorite, you can do a triple line dialer, which we use through a service called Batch Dialer, right? So Batch
Mhm.
Dialer is our dialer, and we like that because it allows us to reach a lot of people very quickly. If you're hand dialing, you're going to be able to only reach typically between someone brand new getting started, they're going to reach somewhere between 20 to 60 people in an hour. But with a triple line dialer, you can reach roughly around twice that, 2 to 3 times
Mhm.
that, depending on how new your list is and so on, right? So
Yeah.
it allows you to reach a lot more people like very quickly and just get you to the end result that you want much faster, which is having conversations with motivated sellers.
Yeah. I love it. We actually used a different one called Mojo
Hmm.
Dialer,
Yeah.
which same thing, but a triple line dialer. Like you said, I was explaining this to someone yesterday. So the program is calling. You upload your list with the phone numbers in there. The program is dialing three different numbers at the same time, and
Yeah.
which if let's say the second one picks up, it
Yeah.
automatically hangs up the other two dials, puts them back into the data to call again later, and connects you directly to the person who answers the phone, and their
Yes.
information, excuse me, pops up on the screen, and then you can see their address, their name, their mailing address if it's the same or if it's different, all that information, so that you know you're talking who you're talking to and which property you're talking about. So
Yeah.
that's how the dialer works. Which, yeah, it's
Yep.
much easier, a little more expensive to do a 3 line dialer, but much more
Mhm.
effective, and you can call so many more people than a single line dialer.
Yeah, when most people are getting started, a triple line dialer can be a little intimidating for people.
Hmm.
So what I
Yeah.
typically recommend you to do is kind of start like where you're at, right?
Hmm.
So if your budget or your just your confidence level feels better with a single line dialer, start there. It's more important that you get in the reps and get in that build that pattern of consistency every single day, because that is really what's going to bring you the success you want. And then once you're feeling good about it, you're making the calls and all that, you're ready to speed things up, then a triple line dialer can be really helpful for you.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Chris, this has been awesome. You've given lots of great information about wholesaling, how to get started, how to stay motivated, tons of great information. So before we go, um, how can people get in touch with you? How can people find you? What if somebody that's listening is like, hey, I want to learn more about wholesaling? Where can they go to find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. So if anybody here listening to this is saying virtual wholesaling sounds very exciting to me, I've done a lot of research on different types of ways to get into real estate, and wholesaling is just where it's at. And I love the idea of being able to do this at home from my couch. Then what I'd recommend for you to do is go to virtualwholesalingmadesimple.com, and there's an application there, right? Now, I don't take on everybody. I have limited spots available, but if you fill out the application, be very detailed in your responses because, like I said, I don't take on everybody. But if you fill out the application and after it comes through, I like what you have to say, I'll consider inviting you in on the program. We can have a more deeper conversation about what that looks like and how we can guarantee that you'll land your first deal in 90 days or how we continue working with you to do. So that's what I recommend, going to virtualwholesalingmadesimple.com, completing an application. I also have, you can connect with me on Facebook too. My username is Chris Logan, REI. If you'd like to shoot me a DM and ask some questions before you do that, totally cool. And I look forward to connecting.
That's awesome, Chris. So again, what he said, I don't know if you caught this, everybody there that's listening, if you are interested in learning, he said that, number one, go to the website, Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple. Fill out the application. You guys don't know this. I know this because I know Chris well. He has quite a few clients that he works with. He does not have a lot of time, but there is an application process on there. Fill out the application. He'll get in touch with you. But what he said, which I think is huge, is he will guarantee that you will sell your first property within 90 days, which is huge, or continue working with you until you do. So you don't get much better than a guarantee from a coach who's been there and done it lots and lots and lots of times. So make sure you go to the website, check him out, follow him on Facebook. Chris, anything else you want to share with our listeners before we jump off?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks so much for having me here today. It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I could talk about this stuff all day. It's what I love, what I'm passionate about. The biggest piece of advice I could give to anybody listening to this who is like wondering about like getting started and how they can make that happen, understand this. You are one call away from completely changing your life. Just one call. So if you're making calls and you have a rough call and you're thinking about hanging it up for the day, make one more call, because that one more call could be the difference between staying stuck or landing that first deal and getting the momentum to propel yourself forward.
Absolutely. I love that. Great encouragement. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Again, enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you in person here soon. And I will talk to you again very, very shortly. Take care, buddy.
Awesome, brother. Thanks.
All right.